From that day on, my brother and sister-in-law made their stance clear: we'll manage the household ourselves. It's time for you to find another place to live. My mother, siding with them, treated me like an unwelcome guest. Did they even realize who had been covering the bills all this time? I never expected such ingratitude from my own family. In the quiet corners of my mind, I began forming a plan. My name is Kinsley, a 30-year-old woman who found herself back at her parents' home after college. Initially, I pursued a corporate career, eager to carve my own path, but the pressures of the workplace overwhelmed me. Defeated but determined, I returned home to regroup. While unemployed, I began exploring work-from-home opportunities. With a background in science, I ventured into freelance engineering. The project started small, the pay modest, but the independence was deeply rewarding. Unlike the corporate world, freelancing allowed me to earn well without the exhaustion of constant social interaction. Over time, my confidence and income grew. Within a year, I was earning as much as someone in a stable corporate job, but my success came with its own challenges: my family's understanding, or lack thereof, especially my mother's refusal to accept my unconventional career. My father grasped it eventually, but my mother, stuck in her traditional mindset, could not reconcile my online work with what she deemed a real job. She questioned me constantly. "How long do you plan to stay at home?" she'd ask, her tone dripping with skepticism. Even when I showed her client emails and payment statements, she dismissed them, convinced I was either involved in some scam or a fringe religious group. "What if you end up relying on unemployment benefits? Those don't last forever." I'd considered moving out, but my savings weren't yet sufficient. Around that time, my father's health took a turn. His worsening back and legs meant he needed nursing care. He retired early, and the sudden loss of income left him leaning on his pension. Though he reassured me, "My pension will cover everything," I couldn't help but worry, especially knowing my mother's spending habits. His weary expression betrayed his anxiety about the future. My father had always supported me, through college, through my mental health struggles, and even when I came home to rebuild. The thought of abandoning him now didn't sit right with me. My mother, confused and overwhelmed by his declining health, offered little stability. Determined to help, I assured my father, "I'll take care of the family now." His surprise was evident. "Are you sure your income is enough?" I showed him my financial stability, and for the first time, he realized just how far I'd come. With his approval, I began contributing to household expenses, medical bills, and anything else we needed. I transferred money directly to his account every month, ensuring we stayed afloat. To manage my mother's spending, I opened a new primary credit card and gave her a supplementary card. My father, ever cautious, asked her gently, "Please be mindful with the expenses." Her response was cutting: "Shouldn't Kinsley be the one to move out instead?" I reminded her of the financial load I carried and how the household would struggle without my contributions. Even then, she remained skeptical. It took my father's persistence to convince her to let me stay. For the next year, I juggled freelance work and household responsibilities. My mother, however, began taking my support for granted. Her demands increased, and her patience with my workload wore thin. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she'd scold, ignoring the long hours I spent managing both work and family duties. Though I tried to explain the challenges of balancing everything, she dismissed my efforts. The strain between us deepened, and the warmth in our relationship felt irretrievably lost. In contrast, my father's quiet understanding kept me going. He saw my efforts and appreciated them in ways my mother never could. But as the months passed, his health deteriorated further. When he was hospitalized, I visited him every day. I shared many moments of concern and reassurance with my father, who, aware of the strain I was under, expressed his gratitude. "I know it's not easy with your mother, but thank you for everything you're doing," he said, his voice full of appreciation. Despite the weight of my responsibilities, I remained committed to supporting my family. However, as my father's health issues grew more severe, the already fragile relationship between my mother and me began to deteriorate even further. Though I often felt suffocated by the situation, memories of my mother's past sacrifices for me during my student years kept me grounded in my commitment to helping her. But everything changed when my brother, Wesley, and his wife, Aaliyah, arrived unexpectedly. Wesley explained their decision to move in. "We're going to live here now, to help ease the burden on you." The statement caught me off guard. My mother, avoiding eye contact, nodded in agreement, while Wesley and Aaliyah claimed their move was intended to support me. Yet, There was an underlying implication in their words. My mother, still expressing gratitude, subtly added, "Now you'll have to contribute more to the household." The unexpected turn left me questioning their motives. Wesley, a graduate from a prestigious college, had landed a solid job at a well-known company. His salary must have been substantial. Yet I, too, was working hard on my freelance career. Couldn't they manage without me? I wondered. The transition to living with my brother and his wife quickly proved more demanding than I had anticipated. "Wake up, Kinsley, make breakfast," Aaliyah called out, banging on my door one morning. I was already awake and deeply immersed in my work, an early riser by nature. "I'm already up and working," I replied, but they insisted I make breakfast. "Get on with it," Aaliyah ordered. "Make breakfast." Reluctantly, I joined them in the kitchen. Normally, our family had a more relaxed morning routine, where we could enjoy meals at our own pace, especially when my mother or Aaliyah were present. I had assumed that it was customary for the wife to prepare breakfast for her husband, but Aaliyah insisted on my cooperation. Despite my best efforts, my breakfast preparation was met with dissatisfaction. "Is this all you're making? This isn't enough," they complained. I had carefully made scrambled eggs, a refreshing salad, buttered toast, and sausage, thinking it was a decent spread. Clearly, it wasn't what they expected. "If it's not enough, you don't have to eat it," I snapped, my frustration getting the best of me. Aaliyah's surprise turned to anger, and Wesley joined in. "Who do you think you are?" Aaliyah barked, while Wesley added, "What kind of attitude is that? Who do you think you're talking to?" Trying to explain myself, I said, "I have work commitments," but they dismissed my words with a scoff. "What kind of work is that? Are you crazy?" Wesley shouted. At my breaking point, I grabbed my laptop, ignored their protests, and stormed out. My brother's voice echoed behind me, "Where are you going?" But I didn't answer. I headed straight to my father's hospital room. When I walked in, he looked up in surprise. "Kinsley, what's wrong? You look upset," he observed. "I just had a huge argument with Wesley and Aaliyah," I admitted, feeling overwhelmed. He looked concerned. "I didn't know it had gotten that bad." "I'm sorry, Kinsley, don't worry, you can live your life however you want." I voiced my anxiety. "But what about Mom? She might be more comfortable if Wesley were here." "You don't need to be in a place where you're uncomfortable," my father reassured me. "All I want is for you to live happily. You don't have to stay where you don't feel good." Encouraged by his words, I made a decision. It was time to leave. Later that evening, when I returned home, the atmosphere was tense, almost like a scene from a movie. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law were all sitting with serious expressions. "Why weren't you at work today?" Wesley demanded. "I had to take the day off because of you." I was left wondering how easy it was for him to take time off work, yet here I was, doing everything to keep our lives running smoothly. Their voices grew louder until Wesley finally demanded, "Get out. The three of us will live here from now on. If you don't want to stay, then leave. We don't need you around." Shocked, I asked, "Why? What did I do?" But they didn't answer. Instead, they doubled down. "You're not needed here anymore. We can handle everything without you," Wesley insisted, while my mother nodded in agreement, adding that she too considered me an obstacle. Frustration boiled inside me as they dismissed my contributions and focused only on their own concerns. Enraged by their insensitivity, I knew it was time to act. I took swift, decisive action. First, I transferred the funds tied to the credit card my mother used daily into an account solely under my control. I knew it would shock her when she discovered her card no longer worked. Next, I moved money from my father's account, a critical resource for our family, into a separate account earmarked solely for his medical expenses. This step, carried out without my mother's knowledge, effectively shifted the financial burden onto my brother and his wife. I wasn't privy to the full details of my brother's earnings, but I was certain this move would weigh heavily on him. Once these financial adjustments were complete, I packed my belongings and announced, "I'm leaving." Their reactions caught me off guard. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law, who had harassed me relentlessly, now looked stunned. Their expressions betrayed that they hadn't expected me to follow through. However, the subtle satisfaction in their faces revealed they might secretly relish my departure. As I stood by the door, they couldn't resist one final jab. "Finally leaving? Good. You've been nothing but trouble. Don't come back." "Don't worry, I won't," I shot back, adding firmly, "and don't contact me." Their smug smiles stayed with me as I left, though I couldn't help but wonder how they'd cope in my absence. Free from their constant demands, I moved into a tranquil, welcoming environment. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace and autonomy. Rejuvenated, I threw myself into my work, rediscovering a passion for the career I had painstakingly built. But just as I settled into this new chapter, the inevitable happened. My phone rang, and it was Wesley. "I told you not to contact me," I said, irritation evident in my voice. "What do you want?" His tone was laced with panic. "Kinsley, what did you do with the family finances? We can't access anything." I remained calm. "I handled the finances to support all of you while I was there. Now that I'm gone, those responsibilities are no longer mine." Desperation crept into his voice. "But Mom said," "Well, I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't want to listen." I cut in. "It's your turn to manage things now. Good luck." Weeks later, Wesley called again, this time with a surprising confession. "I lost my job, Kinsley," he admitted. "I made a big mistake, and they fired me." For a moment, I was speechless. It became clear that he had returned home assuming the family's financial situation was stable, likely relying on the illusion of a secure pension from our father's retirement. He, my mother, and Aaliyah all began pleading for my help. "We're running out of savings," my mother admitted, her tone uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Your father won't contribute to the household anymore." I wasn't swayed. "I've done more than my share," I told them firmly. "It's time for all of you to figure it out on your own." With that, I severed communication. Meanwhile, my father, weary of the constant tension at home, took his own steps toward peace. After consulting a lawyer, he relocated to a quieter place, far removed from the chaos. I visited him regularly, cherishing the calm and the meaningful conversations we shared. Updates on my brother filtered through mutual acquaintances. Wesley had moved into a modest apartment and was leading a stripped-down, frugal lifestyle. My mother, having no choice, took on a job, though she struggled to adjust. The pressure became too much for Aaliyah, who eventually left, leaving my brother and mother to fend for themselves. Their lives unraveled further as my mother's spending habits spiraled into debt. While a part of me felt a twinge of concern, I knew my limits. I had already given so much. It was time to focus on my own future. In my serene new home, I poured my energy into growing my career, creating a comfortable and secure life. With a steady stream of resources and opportunities, I began contemplating new ventures and goals. Above all, I prioritized spending quality time with my father, savoring every moment with him. His gentle wisdom reminded me that life's true wealth lies not in material possessions but in the connections and memories we cherish.